Good evening, one and all. Good afternoon, or whenever it is that you start listening to this or seeing this. In the first 15 minutes or so, we give to a sense of settling, give it to ourselves to allow the heart to be in touch with the well-being that we wish ourselves, and the gratitude for life itself. And in breath, of well-wishing for life, in touch with that wishes itself well, wishes the best for itself, which we've been given. And releasing, giving back, relinquishing on the out breath, and the joy in this moment is shared and yet individual time and space in the current here and now. And all the time in the world. The gratitude of this moment, the experience of life, allowing, permitting experience in this stillness. A breath, a moment, received, known, and released through the whole of experience, the whole of the body and mind. An in-breath is given. And the out-breath released. Just this much. Nothing to grab hold of, nothing to get rid of. Nothing to become, nothing to get away from, nothing to go towards. And full appreciation and joy in this moment. Reality revealed. A breath. Fully experienced. And released. The whole of it, the all of it, known, and the knowing itself, known. That's awake. the whole of it, just from each experience, the whole of the body, the whole of the mind, the whole of the heart, the whole of life, known in the knowing, and released in nature. All the urgency of needing or wanting to get rid of, transformed into the effort and energy to know this knowing now and here. With this urgency, and truth. Just this, no more, no less. All of it and only it. However it is. This knowing is known. And this completeness, this awakened experience, complete, and released. not rejected or clung to. Nothing to get out of it, nothing to get rid of. In this trust. Now for the next section, we reflect on some topic depending on what causes and conditions support for the evening on this bright and warm Friday evening, just past the middle of September. And just this acknowledgement that we're here together and separate. And there's an interest in the truth. There's an interest in, there's some coming from a sense, I hope, and trust of well-wishing, because I do have some confidence that life wishes the best for itself, and however limited the capacity is, it works to the best of its capacity. And for us humans, there's an incredible variety, and there's also a lot we have in common. So we all are particular, and then there's all that we have in common. And I'd like to talk about some of the differences and how that, the differences and the conflicts that come from the differences, or the stresses that come from those differences, and how wise reflection can allow this heart to be more at ease, allow this heart to be happier. Actually recognizing what it already has. So that's what I've been considering, and you know, about how we perceive, and this this process, and how different it is for each of us, and how it changes for each of us, and the the way that each of us looks at something, the way that each of us considers something. We may think that we're looking at the same thing, but the way that we receive it and what we put onto it is different. Uh, and that's a function of perception. Um, the example that is in that book that I recommended last time, I think, Buddha Dhamma, was how different people will come across a single tree that's standing somewhere. Or if the person's looking for fruit, they'll look at the fruit, look for the fruit. If somebody's looking for shade, they'll try and look for the shade. If somebody's looking for firewood, they'll look for something else. And we notice this in our lives. When we're working on something, or when something comes up in our lives, we start seeing it everywhere. Or if we're particularly skilled in something, then that's where our heart will go to. Our perceptions are conditioned by what we want out of something, or what our habits are, and how we what our sense of our own need or our own aversions are. And I think that there are many levels of perception, and I think some are sort of hardwired, deep deep levels of perception, which are in which we call for convenience instincts. I think if we somehow the perception arises that something could be dangerous, then there's an automatic, the body will work in its own way automatically and will jump back or will react. We see something we think is dangerous, and there's an immediate, without thinking about it, response. Those are interesting perceptions, and they're not wrong. They're just how the body works, and it's programmed. I mean, but there are probably ways of working around it, but if we go close to something, there's going to be certain danger, and that's not a thought about perception, but then we build on these perceptions as well. And also there can be mistakes, even on the instinctual level. They're hardwired in, but the response may be not what we won't be in accordance with actually the truth. This is the case where we see a piece of rope and we think it's a snake, and then but we think that something's dangerous and it's not, or we think that something's not dangerous and it is. That's both, or it's not even a thought. It's just instinctively we feel that something is dangerous and it's not, or we feel that something is not dangerous and it is. And then these mistaken perceptions. And as I feel that there are more complications that happen with perceptions as we add perception upon perception, then it gets the responses can be more and more or less distorted and mistaken. And so you get whole perceptions about this person's that way or this person's this way. And then we have the perceptions about ourselves. I'm this way and I'm that way. And these are made up habits. And because they're made up habits, they're not going to last forever. And they're going to be different. And then different people will have different perceptions of ourselves, and we'll have different perceptions of other people and the perceptions will change. And it's not wrong that it shifts and changes. But to recognize that, and this is where we say, don't take it personally and don't trust it completely. Our perceptions are not something to take refuge in. If we feel that some person's this way or something's always this way, it's not always the case. It's not going to be always the case. I'm talking little abstracts, but and the one that you've heard me talk about is beetroot. I always used to think that beetroot's terrible stuff, but I can notice that it can change, and it's actually not that bad. And we look at somebody and we think, well, that person's always terrible. It's not sure, and we can have our perceptions about ourselves. I'm always this way, and I'm always that way. And this is a not sure perception, and giving a sense of reliance on it is going to be more stressful. This is the nature of sanya, and the habit we make about it is sankhara. And that's the way that we add to it and add to it and add to it. And as I said, some of it's at a visceral, instinctual level, and some of it's something we've built up upon. Sanya sankhara. And it's very, very uncertain. And this is anicca. And the bit that, the encouragement for release is to see it as it is and to start practicing this perception of anicca. Not sure. There could be another way. It's not going to be certain. And what I've been talking about is receiving the whole and receiving the truth. And this interest, which is, I feel, what encourages and spurs us, is what is real. And that I do really reflect often on what Dhamma is. Dhamma is something that's revealed by wisdom, and there's only one Dhamma. There's not many. It's okay. When we all say we all find our own truths and we all have our own truths, I don't feel that that's helpful. Yes, there is all individuals, but they're all really uncertain. And I don't, um, I don't like to give. What we do have is our own opinions. There are many, many different opinions, and there are many, many different perceptions. But the truth is revealed by wisdom, and it's not something that needs or encourages, or it's apparent. It's here, it's now, and it's not bound up by time. And if it's not bound up by time, it's not bound up by space. It's outside of all this time and space, outside of thought. And that construction outside of, it's, if it's going to be the truth, it's here, it's now, and it's outside of time and space. It's what you can really be in touch with here and now. The perceptions that come from listening to this or seeing this, in whatever time and space one finds oneself in, I hope it's an encouragement for us to actually notice what's here and now and outside of time and space, outside of these words. And is also beautiful and in some way encouraging that beauty. Now, beauty, is there a beauty that's outside of time and space? It's not a matter of opinion. That's a question that I hope will encourage, that investigation, to find, encourage investigation into what is a beauty and what that's outside of time and space, that what does encourage outside of time and space. Give oneself a sense of daring, a sense of inquiry, and a sense of joy at that. A joy that is not, the joy that's just like, oh, wonderful. And that goes beyond just awesome. Awesome is like sort of awe-inspiring, slightly frightening. But what goes beyond that and actually leads to a sense of, oh, that this is truth. And there's just one truth. There's not many. And this is available for every, it's open to the human condition. It's something that the human condition has the most capacity to rest in. It's revealed by wisdom. Now, here, in this moment, that's not caught up in thought or thinking or time or space. And in that is encouraging and beautiful in a way that leads to peace. And it can be done. So when there's, this is the, if you want to reflect or perceive anything, have sanya about anything, have the sanya that perceives the truth, that leads one to the truth. So remembering and sustaining that recollection is sati, and and samadhi, sati, sampajanya, and samadhi, which remembers and recollects and gives that sense of continuity. Because that's in the practice of the Dhamma, the mindfulness supports that. The sati supports that. Because sati in itself, I was talking to people today about the mindfulness word and how it's and the mindfulness practices and the concentration practices and this sort of stuff that which are used with that sort of so-called mental training, and it's a mental training, and it's not in itself moral and doesn't necessarily have any generosity. It's just in itself, a practice that one can do. You can, and it gives a sense. It does give a buzz, actually, which is why things that are slightly dangerous and require a certain amount of care give a buzz, because there's some, in that sense of steadiness and absorption into something. And that condition, but it's conditioned, and it can be incredibly unwholesome. One can find the buzz and the excitement in doing something really unwholesome. It's not in itself enough. Just practicing mindfulness and concentration without a basic assumption that, and intention that is wise. It's not out to harm, not out to exploit, and not out to just indulge. Because you can certainly use mindfulness with a sense of wanting to harm or to exploit or to just indulge. Now, it's not in itself enough, because the motivation and the intention can be really wrong. So how you use that tool, and you can use it in subtle ways that are wrong as well. Building up a sense of, and I wonder sometimes, because if it becomes, probably an unnecessary worry that a lot of people develop psychic powers. I don't. We'll see. If it happens, it happens. It won't necessarily lead to liberation. Psychic powers don't necessarily lead to liberation. They can be really misused. And for most of us, luckily, most of the time, we don't believe in psychic powers, even if we have some fanciful ideas about some things. We don't, in our hearts, really believe it. We might think, well, we can get something out of different rituals or practices, but we don't. Most of us are quite deeply materialistic in ways that maybe people ages ago weren't, because perceptions and habits have changed. And what gives them the persistence is the rupa, and then the form they take is from the water element of rupa, and the transformation element is the fire, and Persistence is the earth. And then the vibration of the shift is the vibration of it is the air. And that's all in the rupa. Rupa, form, and the response to it, feeling, is just this very simple before, towards, or away at a very basic level. And the complication is in the sanya and sankhara as it drives. This is a way of talking which I hope just encourages you to recognize that things shift, and what makes things present is the consciousness. And consciousness, unbound and luminous, is what makes the whole business possible. You know, without that side of things. But if we recognize and practice noticing impermanence and this sense of not quite rightness about things that are stuck in time and space, the not quite rightness, or the fact that it's always a little bit off, a little bit wrong, not quite. Keep practicing that perception, because it's not sure, it's never going to really satisfy. And so there's no need at all to take the whole thing too solidly and make story about me and mine and my bit of it. The importance of my bit of it at the expense of all the rest. How can I manipulate this universe so that it can give me satisfaction? Because that is always going to be stressful. However high-minded or wonderful your ideas are, well, it's always going to be, yes, and I'm not saying that it's not good to be high-minded and wonderful, but there's always going to be a certain amount of stress about it. So keeping the whole thing simple is coming back to the presence that one can experience here and now, and the slowing down of that, the being with that, or the giving the self to it, so that there's a relinquishment in the intention. The intention is not a getting or gaining or exploiting or harming. That giving that as the impulse behind it, so that the effort is directed to not do more things that are actually harmful, and not continue things that are already harmful, and to do and to persist in that which is beautiful, does have a sense of encouragement and ease and relinquishment, allowing the things to end easily, allowing the sense of letting go, to be fully, and then do whatever one does that does that, and not doing things that are harmful. Persisting in this with some continuity, so that the mindfulness is samma sati. It is reflective, and that knows as much as one can. It knows the knowing in each moment, so that there's not a straying from the truth. And there's one truth, not many. many opinions, many ideas, many thoughts, many feelings, many different things that come into being, stand forth, go back, collapse according to causes and conditions, habits that come and go, perceptions that come and go, perceptions that are different, ideas. In this strange joining and separation, which is consciousness. There's the knowing that knowing. And the beauty of it. So I offer that as I hope, some encouragement to reflect, practice, not being sure about perceptions, not taking the whole thing too personally, allowing possibilities, and reflecting, what's the blessing that I can give to this moment? And the blessing is that encouragement to realize the beauty of truth. Enough for now. And if you have any questions, then please do. We'll probably sit a bit quietly. And if there are no questions, that's okay. I might start talking some more. If I have the impulse to slap on a mosquito without actually slapping, do I still create bad karma just from this intention, chetana? What is the vipaka from here? What is the result of that? The stress and the need to ask the questions, the vipaka. It's, am I doing the right thing? And that's the kama vipaka, because it's the sense of me and the impulse to squash the mosquito. I don't like it biting. And then the vipaka from that is thinking, well, I'm a terrible person. I shouldn't have to do that if you make it complicated. But if you just, there's the instinctive thing, this is painful. This, oh, bite. And then sometimes the brushing away of the mosquito will happen without any chetana, or without a strong chetana. The chetana comes from an instinctive reaction. And that's quite okay, that one. But if there's a sort of watching of the mosquito and thinking, I am going to slap it, I am going to slap it. If there's actually the intention that comes up, nope, won't slap it, too bad, not going to indulge that, big smile, it's fine. I'm going to give this poor mosquito a little bit of my blood. I'm going to donate some blood so that the eggs can hatch. Because it's only the biting, the mosquitoes that bite are the ones that need the protein to allow their eggs to hatch. I realize that even if I give this protein to this mosquito, maybe it won't find any way to lay the eggs anyway. but never mind. I can give mosquitoes some blood. I might want to slap it, but I don't. Don't take that whole story even too personally. That's just a story that you've told yourself, or I've told you now. And similarly with other impulses to do something and you don't do it, don't make up too much of a story of it. If you do, then you do. And that's the story that gets told and gets run through. And that's the vipaka. And that creates the habit of me. And I'm somebody who now doesn't squash mosquitoes. I'm a wonderful person. I haven't squashed a mosquito for at least 2 weeks. No, but whatever it is, so that you feel that you've broken some bad habit, don't make a whole story about that. Well, if you do, then that's something you'll have to make up. You'll have to deal with later, because you'll have the sense of I'm somebody who's broken a bad habit. Just notice how things are. Don't make such a story about it. And see how it works out. Don't stories about the habits that one makes or don't make. That's the vipaka. If one makes a lot of a thing, just notice it's more peaceful. Don't worry about it. And ghosts, I don't know. There are all sorts of things that are ghosts. And vijnana is a word. The life force is a way that the people call vijnana. That's a term that is used in Theravada Buddhism in some places for life force. I think it's just force itself or habit itself finds the best form that it possibly can, and depending on what happens with it, there are different ways of doing it. And I don't think that most of us nowadays have a lot of, at least I don't have a lot of capacity to work with perceptions that I'm sure of outside of a very narrow range, which is this, human and animal. I don't have a clear perception of devas or hungry ghosts. I have a clear perception of animal and human, just about. I have ideas maybe about hell realms and heaven realms. But for the most part, for me personally, that's an idea. It's not a surety. I haven't had or developed any sort of practice that allows me to have confidence about those beyond the confidence of other people that I have confidence in, if you see what I mean. It's like I don't know much about theoretical physics that says things, like the space between the atoms is greater than the space proportionally than the space between here and the sun. Something like that, which somebody tells me is a truth in physics. And I have this thing here has no direct way of experiencing that. That's a theoretical perception that somebody's put together so that when they look at a physical object, they look at a physical object and then they think, well, actually, it's just atoms. I can't see it. It's just atoms. I suppose there are people who do look at it in that sort of way some of the time, but I don't. And if people do, then that's their skill. Um, you know, as people see different patterns, and that's all to do with perception. And in working with theoretical physics, that's perceptions. People who work in different disciplines, they work with different perceptions. When I was working a lot with plumbing, all I was seeing was plumbing, and my world was plumbing. When I'm, different habits get into that. I did. So it's the way that works. And relinquishing thoughts and memories. Relinquishing is, I think, it's not like forgetting. I think sometimes people feel that they should forget in order to be liberated. And it's not necessary to forget. It's not necessary to forget. It is helpful not to take it too seriously, to not take it too personally, to have a sense of perspective on it. It's happened because things have happened. And I don't need to believe it. My ideas about he did this to me and she did that to me, and did they know that when they were doing that, this was going to happen? And it's, this is my memory of this person, so when I see this person, they're always going to be that way. For one, it's tiring. I mean, we keep adding to it. And for another, it's not true, because they've got a completely different story they're telling about how that situation. And it comes from a whole different set of habits and practices, ideas. And it's like that for them, and it's like this for us. But the knowing, where's the truth? Because there's one truth and not many. And it's that sense of, where's the one truth in this? What's be outside of time and space? What's a beautiful, easeful way of relating to this? Because that's Dhamma. And our refuge is Dhamma. That's a safe place. That's precious. What is necessary for liberation? Is it necessary to have the insight into past lives, or insight into karma, or insight into these and that? What it is necessary is to relate to the Four Noble Truths. This is what's necessary. There is dukkha, it is to be known, and it has been known. That's necessary. And at the same time that happens, there is a cause of dukkha. It is to be relinquished, and it has been relinquished. That happens at exactly the same time as dukkha is truly known. There is an end to dukkha. It is to be realized, and it has been realized. That's necessary, and that happens at exactly the same time as dukkha is known. And it's known that dukkha has been known. There is a path that needs to be practiced. It is to be practiced, and it has been practiced. And that happens at exactly the same time, in exactly the same space, outside of time, outside of space. There is. So this is what arahants know, that there is dukkha, it is to be known, and it has been known. There is a cause of dukkha, it is to be relinquished, and it has been relinquished. There is an end to dukkha, it is to be realized, and it has been realized. And there's a path or a way or a relationship that is to be practiced, and it has been practiced. That's all arahants need. That's the liberating part. And the 4 stages of arahantship. The beginning is the recognition that there is personality. There is things that personality wants to do, habits that it wants to follow, things that it thinks needs to be done. And with that, there's also the thought and the feeling and the experience of, I'm not sure if I can do this, and I'm not sure if it's the right thing. These are the first 3 fetters, and they disappear together, and they're all bound up with thinking. And then the next 3 fetters are lust and hatred. And then there's clinging to fine material form and immaterial form. And then there's restlessness, conceit, and ignorance, the last 3 fetters. These are the things that are worked on. It's interesting, it's a theoretical analysis. Restlessness, conceit, and ignorance. They're very much the same, or the other end is personality belief, clinging to rites and rituals, and doubt. At the other end, there's restlessness, conceit, and ignorance. So the 10 fetters need to be, they're relinquished. That's enough for release. Now, if during all of that process, maybe somewhere along the way, there can be direct insight into these possibilities of psychic powers, ways of using them, what are called psychic powers, and insight into the realms of existence and karma and rebirths and that sort of stuff may happen or may not happen, and how that happens, I'm not sure. But what I'd encourage you in this moment is, of course, to practice Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanto, Samma Ajivo, Samma Vayamo, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. Because this is what we can do. And this is something that's open. And it's outside of time and space. It's the encouragement. And one can notice that this is something that wise wisdom reveals. It's apparent here and now. It's not bound up by time. It's always going to work because it's just the way that it is. It is beautiful. It is encouraging because there's a sense of, oh, that looks nice. And in that, there's also a sense of, oh, no threat, there's no worry, there's no fuss. And for humans, it's possible. Humans do it. It's the birthright. If you want to know what your right is to do the right thing. Your wrong is to do what you want. But it's, or you can say it's what is really wished for, what is really aspired to. That's I hope some encouragement. Encourage yourself, encourage us all to consider what's the right thing to do here. And we'll get it wrong. But really stupid people think they never ever make mistakes. Stupid people don't learn from their mistakes. If we're a bit clever, we learn from our mistakes. And if we're clever, we try to learn from other people's mistakes. That's my little reflection on how things are and the mistakes that we all make because of ignorance, because we don't know. If there is not knowing, and not knowing what we don't know is the real ignorance. And that's why the encouragement I give for all of us is to notice, awaken, and awareness of the subtle, neutral things that we don't notice because it's neutral, thing that's not so irritating. Because when we don't know the neutral, the tendency is get caught in doubt. If we know that there's neutral, if we know that we don't know the neutral, then it's actually quite peaceful. So in the meditation and in the encouragement through the day is to notice what we don't notice, what we don't usually notice, the neutral part, not the bit we get stuck on, the bit of irritation. Like the princess, who's so sensitive, irritated by a pea under 12 mattresses. She noticed all the levels and the subtleties. You could still get irritated by a bee. And the bit that is the irritation is the self-centeredness and the self. The bigger the sense of self, self-righteousness, or the more all consuming is the sense of what do I want? The more pain and stress there is for us all. Which is why the actual wish that is actually there, may all beings be well. And that's inclusive. It includes, of course, this being. Born and to be born. All beings. That's the beauty in that. So I've rabbited on for a bit, talked a little bit. So maybe we can leave it here and I can open it up unless there's any more questions. Last chance.